It happened in the middle of the dinner rush, when plates clattered, waiters dashed between tables, and the smell of grilled salmon and freshly baked bread filled the air. Alina's hands were trembling as she balanced a tray of drinks. She was exhausted, running on little more than coffee and determination, when her phone buzzed in the pocket of her apron. She never checked it during work, but the name flashing on the screen, written in Cyrillic, froze her steps. It was her little brother, calling from a small village thousands of miles away in Russia. Without thinking, she answered, speaking quickly in her native tongue, her voice low but urgent. The words spilled out, concern, promises, and a prayer she whispered in Russian before ending the call. She didn't know anyone had been listening. But someone had. A man in a tailored navy suit, sitting alone at a corner table, watched her with an expression she couldn't read. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that life can change in an instant, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel Stories Collection so we can bring you more inspiring stories like this. Alina had been living in the United States for almost 4 years, working 2 jobs and sending every spare cent back home to her brother, who was still in school, and her sick grandmother. She had studied literature back in Russia, dreaming of becoming a translator, but life had thrown her into a different kind of translation, turning long hours of work into survival for her family. The night of that phone call, she didn't sleep much. Her brother had told her the heating in their home had broken in the middle of winter, and her grandmother's medicine was running out. Alina's chest ached thinking of them shivering under thin blankets while she walked through streets lined with expensive boutiques she could never step inside. The next morning, she dragged herself to work again. The restaurant was quiet in the early hours, the smell of bleach still lingering from the cleaning crew. She tied her hair back, buttoned her black uniform shirt, and tried to focus on folding napkins. She didn't notice the same man from the night before until she turned and saw him leaning casually against the counter, speaking to the manager. He looked entirely out of place in the empty room, his presence seemed to hum with quiet authority. The manager beckoned her over, and in a calm but firm voice told her she'd been given the day off. Confused, she took off her apron, thinking perhaps she'd made a mistake and was being sent home. But the man simply nodded toward the door and said she should come with him. Her first instinct was to refuse. Life had taught her to be cautious of strangers, especially wealthy ones. But something in his eyes, something almost protective, made her pause. Outside, a sleek black car waited at the curb. As they drove through the city, he explained in measured tones that he had recognized her Russian and had understood every word of her conversation the night before. He, too, had grown up in hardship, in a part of Siberia where winters could swallow you whole. The reason he had been in the restaurant was because he was meeting an investor who canceled last minute, leaving him alone with his thoughts, and with her story. The drive didn't stop at any office or hotel. Instead, they arrived at a private airstrip. There, gleaming under the morning sun, was a white private jet. Alina's heart pounded. She asked where they were going, and he answered simply, home. The word caught in her throat. She hadn't been home in years, not since she had left with a suitcase full of cheap clothes and impossible hopes. She stepped onto the plane, her breath quickening as she sank into a leather seat. The flight was surreal. He told her his name was Andrei Volkov, a self-made millionaire who had built a shipping empire after starting with nothing but a used truck and a stubborn refusal to quit. He had heard desperation in her voice the night before, the kind he recognized from his own past. He had decided, in that moment, to help her in a way that would change her life. She didn't know whether to feel grateful, suspicious, or terrified. It all seemed too much, too sudden. When the plane landed in Russia, the cold air bit at her cheeks as she stepped down the stairs. They drove for hours through snowy roads until the landscape turned familiar. Her village appeared on the horizon, small wooden houses, smoke curling from chimneys, the same narrow lanes she had walked as a girl. And there, standing in the doorway of their modest home, was her brother, his eyes wide in disbelief. Her grandmother's frail figure appeared behind him, wrapped in an old shawl. Alina ran to them, tears stinging her face, holding them so tightly she thought she might never let go. Andrei didn't stay long that day. He arranged for the heating to be repaired immediately, paid for a year's worth of medicine for her grandmother, and left an envelope of cash on the kitchen table without a word. Before he left, he told Alina he had an offer for her, a job in his company, not as a waitress but as a translator for his international clients. He said he'd seen the spark in her eyes, the quickness in her speech, the sharp mind she had hidden behind tired smiles. Returning to the United States felt different now. She no longer carried the same heaviness in her chest. The job he gave her paid enough for her to send more money home and even save for herself. In the months that followed, she worked closely with Andre's team, traveling to conferences, interpreting contracts, and slowly stepping into the life she had once thought impossible. She learned that sometimes the smallest moments, a phone call answered in your native language, a stranger listening, can set in motion a chain of events that alter your destiny. Alina's story wasn't a fairy tale. It was built on years of endurance, on nights when she thought she couldn't keep going, and on the rare, extraordinary kindness of someone who remembered what it was like to need a hand. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Stories Collection. Your support helps us continue to share stories that remind us all of the beauty and power of kindness. Special request, please comment below. Kindness changes lives, if you believe in helping others when they need it most. Alina never forgot the feeling of that first night back in her tiny village, the way the frost bit her fingertips, the way her brother's voice cracked when he said her name, the way her grandmother's thin hands shook as she cupped Alina's face. Those moments carved themselves into her memory, not as a dream, but as proof that life could shift in an instant. The memory stayed with her during the long flights and late nights that came with her new role in Andre's company. At first, stepping into a world of glass offices, luxury hotels, and polished boardrooms was overwhelming. She was used to carrying trays, not translating for executives who spoke in sharp, clipped English, French, or Mandarin. The first time she sat at a conference table surrounded by men in tailored suits, her palms sweated so much she worried she might smudge the pages in front of her. But every time her voice wavered, she remembered that it wasn't just her own life she was holding up, it was her family's future. That thought steadied her. Andre's mentorship was not gentle, but it was unwavering. He didn't pamper her or shield her from mistakes, instead, he challenged her to think faster, prepare more thoroughly, and carry herself with the quiet confidence he believed she already had. There were nights she returned to her small apartment and cried, convinced she wasn't enough for this new life. But in the morning, she would pull on her best suit, pin her hair back, and walk into the office with her head held high. Months passed, and Alina began to notice the changes, not just in her bank account, but in herself. She spoke with a steadier voice, met people's eyes without hesitation, and no longer shrank into the background. She had traded exhaustion for ambition, and fear for purpose. Her colleagues began to respect her not because Andre had brought her in, but because she had earned her place. One winter evening, almost exactly a year after the night in the restaurant, Alina stood on a hotel balcony in Moscow. Snow was falling in soft, deliberate flakes, and the city lights glittered like 1,000 tiny stars scattered on the ground. She had just finished translating for a major deal that would bring hundreds of jobs to a struggling port town, a deal she had helped Andre secure. She pulled her phone from her coat pocket and called her brother. His voice was deeper now, more confident. He told her he had been accepted into university, something that had once been an impossible dream. Her grandmother's health had stabilized, and the house was warm. As she hung up, Alina realized that while Andre had opened the door for her, she had been the one to step through it, to walk the hard road on the other side. Her journey hadn't erased the years of struggle, but it had transformed them into something stronger, a foundation she could stand on for the rest of her life. When she returned to the US, she decided to visit the restaurant where she used to work. The place was still the same smell of fresh bread, same worn wooden tables, same rush of orders shouted over clinking plates. A new waitress hurried past her, tray in hand, looking just as tired as Alina once had. Without saying anything, Alina slipped an envelope onto the counter with enough cash to cover that girl's rent for 3 months. It wasn't charity, it was a reminder that sometimes, all it takes is one moment, one act of kindness, to change everything. If this story made you believe in second chances and the unseen ways kindness can shape a life, please like, share, and subscribe to Stories Collection. Special request, please comment. Kindness changes lives, so others reading will know you're part of this chain of hope.